Hi, everybody. Welcome to this Ask Me Anything version of Shay Davis. So while we're waiting on a few people to join, I've got to check and make sure that everything is happening as it should. All right. So it just takes a moment to make sure everything's working. Since I'm a one-man operation here, I have multiple windows I've got to flip around, so just bear with me a second. And let me make sure everything is 100% as it should be. Excellent. Looks like there's someone watching, so hello to whoever's watching and enjoying me get my act together. So, all right, I think we are just about ready to make it official that we're doing this. So, hello, I hope that you are having a great day or night wherever you happen to be. It is 9:01 p.m. Sunday, February 15th, as I speak these words to you. That's often how I started a prompt in ChatGPT, is to reset it on what the time of day is. Wow, that's a little crazy. Yeah, let me mellow that out a little bit. Hang on. Let's see what our choices are. That's a little better. I wanted a little activity with the background lights because we're celebrating. Chinese New Year week begins this coming week, but Susie and I actually started tonight. Keyframe frequency. Okay. Sorry, I'm double checking something under the hood here to make sure everything is working as it should be. So, Chinese New Year's Eve, as I was saying, is Tuesday this coming week. And Susie and I, because of the complications with our schedules, decided we would celebrate early. So we started with our celebration tonight. And we made dumplings. The video for next week, the actual fully produced normal video, is going to be about cultural traditions and maintaining cultural traditions of yours in a foreign country as immigrants or expats. And we'll focus specifically on us with our Chinese New Year and how we did it here. But it was a lot of fun. We made dumplings and Jenny helped, and I didn't have a chance to pour myself a glass of wine upstairs, so I grabbed the bottle and a glass. So I'm not planning to drink this whole bottle tonight. I don't think we'll be that late. But yeah, that explains what's happening there. So what I'm going to do tonight is, I see, it looks like there are 4 people watching. Hello. My plan is that I will respond to any comments that come in the chat, but we've had a lot of new subscribers and a lot of new viewers in the last month and a half from 2 videos in particular, and there are a lot of comments, and I really tried to reply in the threads for the videos as much as I could. I run out of ways to say thank you sometimes, so if someone offers a short comment, I mean, everything is from the heart, but there are some really detailed comments and they sort of beg a follow-up question, and I thought that what I would do is go through these here on my computer, and I'm not going to look at every single comment, but I'm going to look at some of the most representative ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my scene, so now you can see the comments under the hood that I'm looking at. And the videos that really got the most feedback were the thumbnail says 5 expat risks, but it was the one about living in France during US-EU tensions. That really generated a lot of conversation. The other one that really has a lot of comments, the 3 myths about living in Paris. Apologies for the very YouTube-y thumbnail, Paris Lies. Sometimes the thumbnail, I feel, is really something I can be proud of, and sometimes it just serves the point to give you a heads up and grab somebody's attention so they can look at it and see if it's for them. That one also had a lot of views and a lot of thoughtful comments. And the third one that, whoops, didn't mean to hit that button. The third one that had the most comments, I'm scrolling down. If I'm giving you whiplash, apologies. As I scroll, you see what video. Most of these are for that 5 expat risks video. But as I go farther back, there was a video about us living in France for 2 years that got a lot of feedback. And there are also several about Copycat Café, as well as some on our Alliance Française videos, where Susie and I talk about our experience studying French at Alliance Française, and offered some of our thoughts about how we are continuing to approach our language studies, as well as, what we thought about that school in particular. And I'm looking to see. Let me double check. I'm wanting to make sure. Again, apologies. The reason this isn't as slickly produced as something that I can edit is that I'm having to manage multiple windows to make sure you're seeing the right feed and make sure it's going out. So I have to pop around to multiple applications. Looks like we're good. Looks like we're still good. So, without further ado, again, just a quick reminder, as I said, please feel free to jump into the chat if you wish, and offer your comments up, and I will do my best to respond in some detail here. So the first comment that I wanted to address actually gets into a broader conversation about which perspective are you looking at a subject through. What lens are you analyzing your situation? And this commenter, I'm going to say it's Gilmaurice 9662, had a comment about the Expat Risks video, saying, I got the feeling that the video instinctively views the changes on the European side, which was my focus, and they say that they would be more concerned with changes coming from the U.S. And the example they offer is about, if the U.S. administration basically stopped taking into account the taxes paid by U.S. citizens like me to European governments, where they reside, but making U.S. citizens pay in both countries. And without getting into the weeds of our specific personal situation, what I said to them here in the response is essentially, you're correct. I agree with your point of view. There's only so long one video can be, or should be, I would add. So this has the focus it does, because, frankly, I feel like for the average immigrant or expat, the issues in the country that's their new home country are the ones that they are going to have the least familiarity with and are going to need the most help with, and potentially where they could get hung up the most. So that was the focus of that video, and that is sort of our default focus in general, is looking at things that people may not have a frame of reference for. But, there is a tax treaty with the U.S. and France specifically, and the goal is to prevent double taxation and to take into account the issues that you face depending on which, where you earn the money and where you pay the local taxes, and then how you account for that on the other side. And I mentioned in this comment, but I wanted to say it again here for the sake of you watching this video or participating in the live chat, which is that I do have a certified financial planner who I've been trading emails with, and he says he wants to come on the channel and do an interview with me, and I'm going to ask him this question very specifically, and also a bunch of other related things, because he specializes as a CFP in helping Americans move to France, and I see he's also done some work with people moving into Italy and other places in Europe, but U.S. to France is really his specialty. So I think he's a perfect person for me to ask this question and have him lay out the state of things now and maybe where things are going, where he sees these, both the problem areas that people face currently, and also what he is seeing about how laws might change and the rules might shift. And so, the ability to plan proactively and to respond effectively when you're in a situation that is problematic, I think it's good to have someone like him address this. Next, I want to comment, Exposed Root had asked a question which really would be an excellent one to dig deeper on and do sort of for me to get some people who can speak to this personally and authentically. Exposed Root said, I'm a Black American who has 7 countries of non-resort road travel under my belt. I wonder if people living and residing there are treated different than tourists. So the distinction about if you live here legally and reside here and you are someone in a minority group, what your experience is like. Is it better? Are they treated better than tourists? And I told them, yes, I think it's an excellent question. And I mentioned that I could follow up with my friend Alex Swokal, who, as Alex Does France, as he fits this category, this profile of someone. He's a Black American married to a Caucasian French woman, and they live here. But, Exposed Root followed up and said there's no need to make special effort because they don't intend to visit France. And then they said their inquiry is not race specific in this instance, although maybe I'm missing how to take it otherwise. So in the comments, if you see what I'm missing, please illuminate me. But the follow-on said, I'm particularly interested in understanding whether in the current climate, expatriates are perceived as American defectors and accorded greater respect compared to tourists who might be viewed as representatives of the American systemic chaos. Excellent question. And I see that I promised 4 days ago, I was looking at this, saw it before bed, and promised to properly reply tomorrow. Well, tomorrow has become now, today, so apologies, Exposed Root, but I am getting to your question. So I would say that, they said, I'm particularly interested in understanding whether in the current climate, expatriates are perceived as American defectors. That's really one question, one point, and accorded greater respect compared to tourists. Well, to me, that entire thought is there are 2 variables there, not just one variable, right? Because being perceived as American defector, I could assume, and that I know, as I parse this, I can assume that I would know what they are getting at. I'm not an American defector. I've lived. And this isn't directed at me personally, but I just have to start with my own personal example. Anyone who's followed the channel for a while and seen the behind the scenes knows I'm an American who first lived part-time in China in 2013 and then full-time in 2016 until the pandemic, and then back to California and now France. But, I'm not here as an American defector, and I'm still very much an American. That's more my business address of record is, and that's my home. California is my home state and my home country for taxes that controls everything. But my projects are kind of all over the place, the things I have in development. So it's, I'm, in my case, for instance, so I can't speak to that attitude because that's not my reality of being an American defector, so to speak. But I think I can answer it by saying, are we accorded greater respect than tourists? I am treated like a semi-lingual local to my friends. Most of the people who we interact with on a regular basis are full of my closest friends who are not actually French. Are, in one case, there's my friend Wolfgang, who's Austrian. I'm getting together with him for lunch on Tuesday. And there are, a lot of people I know who are from a very complex background. People who, like, I have a friend who is British but raised in Australia but has lived in France 25 years, and so she's effectively a local. If you hear the baby screaming in the background, there might be a diaper change going on in my absence, so apologies depending on what the soundtrack is, depending on what you're getting. But I think the point of the question in so many words can be addressed to, if you're local and you're making an effort to be local and to live your life accordingly and be part of the community, part of the local community, and part of the country at a wider view, I certainly think that you're afforded more respect than someone who comes short term and doesn't know the rules and stands out. Now, no reason that a tourist can't come and have a great experience. And if you come as a tourist, I hope you do have a great experience for the sake of you and for the sake of, the people you encounter here thinking well of you, where you're from, whether it's America or someplace else. But yeah, I can see how tourists could be viewed as representatives of the American systemic chaos, although I don't think they would see themselves that way. I would think that they're just seeing themselves as a person who's going on a vacation and they chose to come here. And some people don't always necessarily know how to fit in and jump into the stream and the flow of the place they're visiting. And there are some people when they travel, I guess the two extremes are people who, when they travel to a new place, they do their absolute best to assimilate and become as local as possible, possibly to an annoying degree. It's like when Madonna developed a British accent after living in London for 6 months or something, but they're the people who really embrace and adopt the local culture. And then they're the people who are just, they're bringing their reality with them. They're just in the new place and they're trying to figure out how to do the thing that they normally do back home, but just do it where they have landed. So I think it's an excellent question, and apologies if I'm not giving it the absolute best answer possible, but I think that'll probably have to do for now. I think if you make the effort, you're going to be perceived well. That's probably, I could have said that. There's an issue with doing these kinds of things live. Reminds me of the old saying, and I forget who it was, the original person, but someone wrote a very long message, like a long letter to someone, and at the end they signed it off and basically said, "Apologies for writing such a long letter. I didn't have enough time to write a short one." Because of course the idea, if you have the time, you can get all your thoughts out and distill it down and edit. But this is live. On the 3 myths about living in Paris video, quoi moi. That's a good username. I like that. Quoi moi. A little hard for me to say. Speaking about this, the 3 myths about living in Paris, expectation versus reality. They say one reality is shown in the first 5 seconds. Huge plumes of cigarette smoke everywhere. I got so physically ill from this I had to leave. I love France, but the smoke thing is too much. Thank you for being real. You're welcome about being real. And that was someone passing behind me in the beginning shot in that video, who was I guess smoking. I didn't see them until I edited the video, and I essentially pointed out I was in a very heavy trafficked area for tourists and locals, and so it's a little hard to say. Again, I wasn't around. I was here. The first time I was ever here was a short visit in 1986. And everybody smoked. It seems like everybody smoked in France and in Italy, where we also went on this kind of lightning round tour. But, it's, I would say that even when I first started coming back here for work in early 2019 and started making more trips here, I've seen less and less smoking now, just in the last, 7 years. So several people weighed in about this, and someone talking about, the non-smoking area was never respected back in the day. Sorry, the baby is screaming so loudly. I don't even know if you can hear me over this. Any of you who may be watching. But so, yeah, I think the smoking situation, several people weighed in to offer their comments. There's not the degree of smoking that you used to see. Now, having said that, I've never been a cigarette smoker. I have smoked a cigarette, but, I'm not a cigarette smoker. But I do like to vape. And it's part of what's nice about my office is I can crack the window like I have here, and I can occasionally have a puff. I'm one of these weirdos who doesn't like cigarettes, but I do like nicotine. So I also have nicotine gum. A little more about me than you need to know. So another one on that topic, about the expectation versus reality. Etienne 8309 said, when you listen to foreigners, whoops, it's too easy to hit the button to change the screen. Etienne 8309 says, when you listen to foreigners, you get the impression that the French have all the faults and all the rest of the world only has virtues. And I responded and said, basically not this one. And not this foreigner. I don't feel that way, but I hear them, and I would say that I do think that's to add to what I said here. I do get where they're coming from, though it's what I work hard not to embody. And Susie and I are both we're trying to learn as much as we can to be local folks. I having lived, in China, I saw a lot of this, where you would have, foreigners coming to China, and expats tended to stick together a lot more closely there. And again, I was the only non-Chinese person in the company that I ended up working for, and most of my clients were Chinese clients. When I went freelance after that company fell apart, and I had a good mixture of both expat friends as well as, well, we'll say you're immigrants, because that's like, an expat implies that the door is open, that you could leave one day, and an immigrant is you've settled, and you're working toward being a citizen, or you have become a citizen. But I think it's super common, obviously, in this day and age, for people to denigrate the other, and it's not a good thing what's happening back in my home country, the denigration of the other and vilification of people. And I don't have to get political to point out that the people who are the Native Americans, they're basically saying, unless you're Native American, you're an immigrant in the United States. So I think that that is good food for thought, and it's not an original thought of mine, but yeah, I certainly think that being in a headspace where you're trying to cast blame all the time says something about your degree of personal evolution that is not flattering. And we all have our moments, no matter how evolved we'd like to think we are. But I think it's unfortunate. There are plenty of people who have unflattering personality defects that get expressed in that way, and those people are everywhere. They're not just here. So, Margaret Ames, I think, is how this would probably break out into an actual name. Margaret Ames, 6522, mentioned that she grew up in New York City and remembers trying to get to and from work while tourists were slowly enjoying the city, so she tries to be mindful of that in Paris. And she mentioned that she has brought her patients for things that seem routine from U.S. point of view, American point of view, but aren't here, and goes through the list, dealing with shopping, vet visits with her dog, car issues, and on, opening a bank account, not easy. And she wraps up by saying she's prepared to continue to navigate this after nearly a year. And I point out to her that, if you grew up in New York City, I think that is as good of a training and preparation as you could possibly have for moving to Paris, in terms of understanding the dynamic of the pace of life, the fact that there are local rules that you have to figure out and respect and abide by, or else you're going to have a really hard time. You're going to have a harder time than maybe you should. And I feel like, the comparison I used in my comment was specifically that if you had grown up in small town Alabama, and then you moved to then you move to New York City, that's a similar adjustment as if you moved from some American city to here. It is going to be a massive adjustment. You have the language issues, obviously, you have the cultural issues. So definitely agree with that. And she mentioned that she also was in LA during COVID, so we were city neighbors, I guess, at that time. Corgi owner 436 said the French do not have the culture of service that Americans do. It can make it really frustrating, and I agreed with that because it's a different type of service. I would say that the point is clear, but to put a little more of a lens on this, it's not the sort of customer is always right culture, which I believe is mentioned in so many words in that video. But I do love knowing that people are being paid, generally speaking, are being paid a fair wage and they aren't hustling for tips. So they're not trying to rush you out of your chair to turn the table, and you can actually relax and enjoy the experience of things like if you're at a restaurant or a cafe. But, as discussed in that video, this is, France just runs more on rules-based politeness. And Johnny Benoit talks a lot about this in his videos. Pretty much all of the immigrants or expats in France who have a channel that you watch besides ours, I mean, they pretty much have all said this very clearly. So, yeah, it's different, and you just have to really work to learn the local rules. What did I say? You have to learn the local dance moves in the video. And Angela Sims Evans, hi Angela, has left a lot of nice comments throughout the channel and appreciated the video. And she also highlighted that enhancing their flexibility skills, for she and her husband, focusing on being more flexible, they have found that very, very use. And, we will adapt. It is in our DNA. Yes, Angela. Adaptation is our DNA, on a, wet head, slippery hat. People don't watch this channel to hear my philosophical thoughts, which is why we don't do these lives very often, because that's what happens if you give me a microphone and a glass of wine and no hard deadline. But this came up in a conversation earlier with someone that I was having, unrelated to this channel, but someone had expressed surprise at something, and I said, evolution doesn't stop. Evolution wasn't a thing that happened. This isn't an evolution versus creationism debate. Please, this is not the channel, for that, and I'm not the guy to have that conversation with. But there's an idea that some people have, that evolution was a thing that happened back in the day, and that's how we got here. People who study philosophy and metaphysics are usually pretty strongly of the opinion that evolution is an ongoing reality. It's something that doesn't stop and will never stop. And you could even say that the point of life is to continue to grow and evolve. And I think most people would agree with that at a fundamental level. So yeah, it is in our DNA to evolve. It's an algorithm. It's not a it's not a it's not an equation with that doesn't expand. So vin et fromage. Hi Daniel. Daniel mentioned I just returned from 2 weeks in Paris. I know we couldn't get together. Timing was tricky, and I look forward to meeting up with you when we do. But he was addressing the comment about smoking as well as some other things. So I just want to say hi, Daniel, vin et fromage, and look forward to actually being able to meet up sometime. Okay, so looks like the username is Malin Rees. Apologies, I don't know quite how to parse your username to guess what your given name is, but it's clearly a lady and a girl in the photo. Says thanks for the demo about the Copycat Café review. You're very much welcome for that, and I believe if I'm scrolling down a few places, Connie Kitten said, this is a very useful review. She also got the impression that it's sort of a beta version, and talks about, the biggest, what I said about Rosetta Stone, her not liking it. She said that was also kind of her biggest issue. And she offered some thoughts about things she'd been using. I'm seeing if there are any other comments on that to highlight. But I did want to say, so my Copycat Cafe review, where I tested it for the 6 days during the 7-day free trial, and I had some critiques. I said how much I went into it with an open mind and saying how I wanted it to be awesome, because it seemed like exactly the sort of thing that I had been wanting, sort of something that included the best aspects of Pimsleur, but with a feedback. And by the end of it, I was frustrated with some things. I flat out didn't like some things. I was moderately satisfied with others, and there's still some things that I really liked. And at the end, I ultimately applauded the idea a lot, and I said, this could be perfect for you, depending on where you're coming from. If you are just starting to learn French and you don't have years of experience with a particular app or study method, then this may feel like the best thing you've ever discovered. But in its current iteration, for where I am at the moment, it wasn't ideal. Well, I want to let everybody know that I got the nicest email from Benjamin, and Benjamin and his partner Noor are the co-founders of Copycat Café. They discovered my video, watched it, and I won't pull up. I didn't check with them ahead of time to ask if it's okay if I shared the details or I just show you the email. But it was a really thoughtful email, and saying how much they appreciated it, especially actually the critiques and tweaks and things I didn't like, because it really helped them to focus the development of this. And they were just super nice and super appreciative. And then they Ben detailed what they were doing point by point of the things I said I had issues with. And I won't go through all that now, but essentially my critiques and questions and my wish list, he explained there was one thing that they had changed on its own before they even saw my video, but just since I used it and before the video was published, they had already made some tweak. But they're working on stuff, and I did apparently. It seems like they weren't unaware of most of what I said, but some of what they heard in the video had given them some additional encouragement to prioritize things to fix. But it was a very thoughtful email, and giving a lot of appreciation for the video, and encouraging me to come back and check it out, and not begging for a follow-up video or any further commentary, but they since gifted me a membership so I can try it and see what I think. And there were no strings involved or attached, but they just encouraged me to please check it out at my leisure and see if I thought that it was better, and to please let them know, to please give them feedback if I would. And I told them in the email, and I'll commit here, I will do that. When I have a little time, I will dig back into it and see what I think. See if I'll test out the things he specifically told me that they were working on as a priority, and see if it feels like it's heading in the right direction. But I wanted to appreciate that they were very accountable to that feedback. So I'm glad I made the video. Type on Tape, hello to you, longtime friend of the show, of the channel. I said something about the romantic struggle myth, and they said that needed to be said out loud, which I appreciate. There were quite a few comments. A few of the most recent ones are here, but specifically our two videos looking at Susie and Mai's experiences at Alliance Française here in Paris. These continue to get a fair amount of views, although those videos have been up for quite some time, and especially Susie's is the biggest video on this channel still. And a lot of great comments. People appreciated that. I had mentioned at the Copycat Cafe review that my goal really is to be able to afford the Alliance Française online courses here, because I think that's actually would fit my schedule the most. I know the curriculum and I feel like it would suit the way that I learn, and the timing and the pacing would be great. It's just need the money. Sorry, I keep listening out for a child. We had a great dinner, but it's getting a bit late for her, so she's it's a little hard to land the plane with her. But on a night like this, Susie's the one working to get her to sleep, and she's usually the person working to get her to sleep. I get her up in the morning all week to go to school and get her ready and pick her up, but Susie's usually who actually gets her to bed. So I had a nice welcome comment from Mega Z1Z about the expat risks video. If you don't read French, they're mostly saying that most French people really like Americans and they can distinguish Americans from their government, and said welcome to France for our family, which merci beaucoup à vous was what I said there. Appreciate that. And interesting, lots of comments, political comments and history about the expat risks video. Someone here, 1958Z, mentioned that they applied for German citizenship by descent 2 years ago, and they're still waiting if things continue to go south in the U.S. They're 68 and don't know they'd move, but it'd be nice to have the option. I agree. And what I told them here, and I've said this a few times on the channel in different places, but in terms of family background, I'm technically 25% French. My dad's mom was French, and I'm roughly a third Irish, the way that it works out with other relatives, and then the rest is a mix of Scottish, English, and Welsh. So I'm all from pale white people country basically, but the latest of my ancestors to go to the U.S. was several generations ago. It was my dad's grandparents. So that's the most recent of my family that moved to the States. So the point of me saying that is that I don't qualify for any citizenship by descent program either here in France or in Ireland, because Ireland was a place I didn't look seriously at moving to Ireland, but everything I know about Ireland, I've never been, which is sad and an oversight that I plan to correct this year. Everything I know about it, I know I would love it for the most part. Despite having a glass of wine, I'm not a huge drinker, and I understand drinking is a pretty big part of the culture. So they say when in Rome, and I guess in this case, when in Dublin, one might have more than a pint. But not to paint with a silly stereotypical brush, but Irish people drink. It's a thing. So sorry, sidetracked myself. My point is that if I qualified for citizenship by descent someplace, I would pursue it, although it wouldn't be, I don't for France. In other words, for instance, if the Irish citizenship by descent option existed, I would look into it just because, although we do plan to live here, I would look into it as a backup, fail safe. I think in this world in 2026, the more optionality you have, the better. So I like the idea of being able to have more options, and not have your future rest at the whims of any one government, and being able to, GTFO if need be. Passport and Pause, special shout out. Passport and Pause has this little blue star. They are a member of the channel. They're one of our first members. My mother being the other member so far. We have 2 members. And I don't typically come on here and, beg for anything. But if you like what you're watching, you're seeing, and you really want to give extra special thanks, the super thanks or super chat options are available in all the videos. The super chat is for live streams like this. The super thanks is for a comment that's on a published video. And we do have memberships where, among other things, you get early access to things. And I don't know if Passport and Pause took advantage of this, but the last couple of videos we've posted were members first. So they went live for members as soon as they had them. and then they would be scheduled for the next day or two. I think one was 3 days down the road. I had it finished, and then it was 3 days later before I made it premiere here for everyone. So thank you, Passport and Pause, for that, and lots of nice comments otherwise. And they're moving this coming December, so almost a year from now. But she said that she'd like to chat about possible collaboration creatively, so I'm here for it. Let me know. You have my info. Lots of, I won't go through each of these in detail. I'll be wrapping this up at the top of the hour, just so you know. This will be about an hour in total. There are so many comments. If I was trying to respond to everything, it would really, no one would watch it. The viewership for these, frankly, is kind of low anyway. But I enjoy doing it, although it's one-sided. I do wish more people would say hi in the chat. I have a window open in the background. If you're watching right now, and even if you don't want to have a conversation, just if you said hello, that'd be cool. I'd love to see and hear from people as they watch. But you do you. I'm glad you're here, or that you're watching after the fact. But there are a lot of political comments on the Expat Risks video, including some from people whose opinion is clearly different than mine, and some of which were very respectfully framed. And there were a few people who came in to like stir up shit and kind of be jerks, not just to me. I mean, I'm a big boy, I can take it. But if somebody's coming in just to be a jerk to me or other people, I have kind of a two strikes policy. If you're, everybody has a bad day, a bad moment, doesn't think before hitting the send button on a thought or a comment. But if someone, there were two people in particular that seemed to be having a very fascinating, detailed, and engaging conversation and argument with themselves in their own heads that they chose to share with me and any of you who saw their comments. And there was one person in particular, she just kind of kept attacking other people who would say things. And even there was someone who, I guess, spoiler alert, she's on the MAGA side of life, which I'm, kind of opposite and opposed to for more than a decade, to be clear. But there was someone who was a conservative, but who had some issues with, was calling out the same things that most of the rest of us call out about the issues going on now. This was a person who was a self-identified conservative, and I voted for this, I didn't vote for all these things, for God's sakes. And this person who is blocked now and will never see this just unloaded, and every mailing list and podcast bro stereotype that people hurl in terms of insults just vomited all over this person. And I thought, I don't need this. I appreciate any commentary that's thoughtful and respectful, or funny. Love funny stuff, enlightening, entertaining, useful. Bring all of that. And but if you're going to come in and just sort of like, light the house on fire, we're going to have a problem and you're going to be gone. So that's not you watching. So appreciate all of those of you who watch and contribute and help make this a cool community that we're building here. So many comments here. This thread, I think it's Tequila Nichols, if I'm saying that right. They mentioned that they and their wife have been in France for a year, traveled to a lot of areas. They're currently living near Cognes-sur-Mer, and that French people have been wonderful to them, and that's been my experience as well. Jean-Louis said Côte d'Azur is a great choice also, and yes. Antonia Fogarty mentioning the administration, meaning the U.S. administration, is trying to unalive Americans. So the world is watching. We in America understand, yes. So many. And this one really made me laugh. Albanda Kino said the world is so small. As soon as the video started, they recognized where I was. They said they used to have their lunch at the brasserie behind me, and they were living at the time of Saint-Maur de Fosses. And their bigger point, besides the cool synchronicity that they know this area where we live, they said that there's two kinds of Americans abroad: the tourist and the escapee. I know because my wife's the latter. She never had any problem with French people, at least here in Bordeaux. It's the attitude. Learn some French, and you should have a wonderful experience. Yeah, I I'm not going to nitpick, especially my new virtual friend. We have a nice chat here about Joinville-le-Pont, where we live, and the area. I mean, I think there's probably a few varieties. There's some variations on tourist versus escapee. Because like I said, we weren't running from anything. We were running to something where we could build our own chosen home. In the case of me and Susie. But your point's well taken. My new friend. I'm not looking to pick a fight with people I like. So, Mark C1234 Goff had a lot of financial points, and at first I thought that I had offended them by something I said about the financial situation, but then they were trying to point out in the detail that we had a really nice back and forth, and appreciated them, and they blessed us, wished us all the luck in the world. We had a really great chat through this, but essentially talking about financial issues in terms of living here and cross-border finance. So again, working to get this CFP guest here as an interview guest for the show, and really hope that they can shed some light on some of the things that Mark C1234 Goff mentioned. And Kevin Riley with some extra characters after his name. Great video. You address topics most France expat videos don't touch. My concern is potential weak U.S. dollar, international tensions, changing the France-U.S. income tax agreement. See my comments above. Yes, I thank them for that. And I made the point here, if you saw the comments that I actually had to moderate, you would understand why most people don't talk about these sorts of things. But we aren't afraid to go where no foreigners in France YouTube has gone before, as long as him and people like you are with us. And so, yes, I'm looking forward to having someone who deals with these subjects for a living actually talk to you about it. I certainly have my opinions and 2 cents about all of this, but let me like this while I'm here. Like and heart. I plan to get somebody who's well educated and experienced to speak on that for you, but I hear where you're coming from. Elric 30, all goodwill people are welcome in France. And I said thank you, and quite a few people had thoughts that were encouraging and welcoming. Olivier Fabre 2091 says, when in France, you're a guest of the Republique Française, which means the principles of liberty, equality, fraternité are valid for any citizen, including yourself. And yes, I appreciate that, embrace it deeply. Those are the same principles. The overlap between the history of France with my fraternity is very detailed, being Freemasonry. So cue the conspiracy comments. I'm surprised I haven't had more conspiracy comments because I wear a Masonic ring in every video, and I've been a Mason 20 years. So, and again, that's it shouldn't even be a topic of conversation, but the point is liberty, equality, fraternity are fundamental core principles within my fraternity, which was heavily developed and influenced in France. So it's not a surprise, but these principles are something that I have brainwashed myself with, and endeavor to live by. Not said as virtue signaling in any way, because Lord knows I don't have the amount of virtue that I wish I did all the days. But yes, I appreciate that. And lots of comments about basically the French large majority like the Americans. I missed that comment when they posted. Someone said, yes, we'll leave that there. Oh, and somebody offered some nice comments. Thomas Looks Thomas Hayot, Thomas Hayo, I'm guessing is how to pronounce that. They have dual citizenship. They're U.S. citizen, but they have dual citizenship because they were born here in France, and they offered some thoughts. I had mentioned in something about my baby daughter being sick with a bunch of stuff, including gastro. So I appreciate the thoughts, and I did look that up, and I appreciate you. Yes, welcome to France, American friends. Appreciate you, Patrick Blanchard. And yeah. Oh yeah, passport and pause again. Moving to France December, letting me up in person. Been following our journey. So yes, you have our information, and look forward to hearing from you. So I guess I'm going to start to land the plane here because we're getting back. You see, there's so many comments here, and I think some of these this video is our biggest video by far lately. I forget how many people actually joined and came to our channel as a result of this video, but it definitely brought in a wide group of people. So let me switch back to just this view as I kind of wrap things up. So we have a lot of content coming up, a wide variety of content coming up over the next few months. It will be a combination of language learning and looking at some of these different apps, as I mentioned during the Copycat Café video. And there will, of course, be our slice of life documentary style things about cultural differences, adventures, experiences. This next week's video, well, as I mentioned at the top of this stream, will be all about bringing your culture or aspects of your culture with you to France, and in our case specifically how we're celebrating Chinese New Year here. And we started tonight, and we will be doing so in different ways almost every night this coming week. So that'll be a pretty jam-packed video for you, unlike this long just wall-to-wall Brendan talking. The video a week from tonight, as I'm recording this, will be heavily edited from a ton of variety of footage, a wide variety of footage. So it ought to be more visually entertaining than just looking at me with twinkly lights in the background. I was trying to give you some movement. But Susie says hi. I heard the baby quiet down about 15 minutes ago, so I guess Operation Get Geneva to Sleep is a success. I am going to check some messages. I hope that you have a great day or night wherever you are, either now or when you happen to see this. I'll be posting in the community, so if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and turn notifications on, and that way you can see community posts that make announcements, because sometimes I do run a poll if I'm thinking of a couple of different options or ideas, or I have a question about which way to take a certain topic I'm working on a video for. I'll put up a poll or post something about it, and I don't get a ton of feedback from that, frankly. Sometimes I get email from people who've contacted me offline, have tracked me down through the contact page, and they just email me and give me thoughts, or they share their opinion instead of it being publicly visible here. But I really appreciate the feedback. Susie and I are both glad that you're here, and hope you have a good one. We'll see you soon.